All right, everybody. Trade deadline day, maybe my favorite day, my favorite calendar day of the NBA season has come and gone. Lots of moves made. Celtics were active. We'll check out around the league. There's a lot to get into, and we got you all covered here on Green with NBC. You know the drill. Let's lock in. What up, what up, what up? What's going on, everybody? It is trade deadline day. Thank you for tuning into another episode here of Green with Envy. As always, this is your boy, Will Weir, checking in. How you doing? How you living? Joining me today to get reactions to every trade that we care to talk about that went down today is my best friend, co-host, and the coach of our podcast, the one and only Greg Manegas. Greg, you ready to do this thing?
I'm ready. In full disclosure for everybody out there, I haven't really had time to look at everything. So you're going to be getting my real-time reaction to a lot of the trades. Obviously, I know about the Celtics trades, but I haven't given much thought, been slaving away in the office, ready to talk hoops.
Well, let's get into it then. And that's the first thing that we're going to start with. Celtics, relatively active. It's kind of it felt like there was a lot of trades, but it's a lot of minor trades that were happening throughout the day today. But starting with yesterday, Celtics were active. So the Celtics overall made 3 different moves on this trade deadline. Yesterday, of course, being the biggest of the 3 with the Xavier Tillman trade. My guy, shouts out 2 months ago, called that shit Nostradamus.
What, you just giving yourself all the flowers the last
just a little bit. I'm humble. I'm humble, Greg. I'm humble. Okay. I'm a mere humble, podcaster.
I was sitting there on the live stream.
Just happens to see into the future at times, and just saying it's a thing.
I'm sitting there producing the live stream yesterday under Ghost Producer, and I'm just like, this man Will is just taking all the victory laps. Like, let's go, Will.
Well, you know what? It's one of those things that on just how much time we put into this, where it's like, you know what? We kind of know some shit. You know what I mean? Like, just without having sources, it's like just trying to put stuff together. It's like we put that shit together 2 months ago. Like, you called the Terry Rozier move to the Heat, right? Like, that feels kind of good when you're like, you know what? I got that right. So, I know a little bit about what we're saying here, but Xavier Tillman to the Celtics. Adam and I gave a whole bunch of our thoughts on that, as we just talked about. My arm sore from patting myself on the back. Greg, we haven't had a chance to get your thoughts yet. So Xavier Tillman to the Celtics, Lamar Stevens, 2 second-round picks to the Memphis Grizzlies. TBD if we're going to see Xavier Tillman in uniform for tomorrow night's game against the Wizards to wrap up this homestand. But just kind of give me some of your thoughts that we haven't heard yet.
Is there a line missing from this image? This changes everything for Lamar Stevens and his family. I don't know that it's.
Hey, Lamar Stevens playing time, that's going up, man.
Yeah, he's gonna get a chance to hoop. But I like Xavier Tillman, man. I've always been a fan of him. Still relatively young. One thing that I think it was Verno. I don't know if it was something he tweeted out or something he was just passing along, but I heard Bill Simmons say that, Verno kind of vouched for Xavier Tillman, said he's like a grown up in the room, 3 kids, grown ass adult, good dude. So I like what Tillman brings. One of the ways that I was trying to help people who don't watch a lot of Xavier Tillman understand it is he does a lot of what Al Horford's able to do. Right. So to me, Tillman, even more than it is Porzingis insurance or front court insurance in general, I do think it's Al Horford insurance, because Al has been playing great basketball. But, last night against the Hawks, he was the best player on the court.
Yeah, he was amazing in that game.
He was unbelievable. The stat line was something that's never been done before by somebody his age. So to keep expecting that level of production out of Al Horford, it's almost unrealistic, even though it is realistic because we know how well Al takes care of his body. But I do think Tillman is a very reasonable facsimile of what Al Horford is. Younger, a little bit smaller, but a little bit sturdier as well. He's a very thick dude.
Not the 3-point shooting, to be clear, but I think the rest of it kind of stacks up. And, to the point that you're making here of Al Horford interest, I think that goes in 2 different directions, right? Mm-hmm. So one, it's just this year, like we just said, look at how amazing Al looked last night, because they had 2 days off for the first time in what has felt like a month. Throughout the end of this year, never mind the playoffs. We'll talk about that in a second. Tillman is going to allow Missoula and the coaching staff to say, yeah, we need KP, got a little knee thing, or Horford, we just want to have a few extra days so he's fresh. Tillman is going to allow you to feel a lot better being like, hey, we got Luke and Tillman tonight. All right, let's roll. Or we have KP and Tillman, and you know what I mean? He's going to give you a lot more opportunities to sneak rest in on game days throughout the rest of the season and still feel extremely high level and extremely competitive. And then from a long-term standpoint, this also allows the Celtics to get his bird rights going into next year. So if they do want to sign him, you don't got to. The Celtics are very, hamstrung with what they can do in free agency. So this is almost that pre-agency that you hear a lot of people talk about, where now if Tillman works out and it's a good fit, I don't think he's going to be breaking the bank. But, if he goes from his $2 million to, let's just say, $5-6 million, the Celtics, regardless of, they're just gonna have to pay a little bit more. That's up to Wick. Is he worth paying whatever that tax is? But they can do that, whereas they can't do that with an unrestricted free agent. That's just
right. And I like what you said about the present and the future, because we're talking about Al Horford this year, and I think he's going to be able to do it for the rest of the year. I don't think he's going to fall off a cliff like he did last year in the playoffs, just because we overtaxed Al throughout the year because Rob was never healthy and Grant just didn't work out here, didn't work out.
We'll talk about Grant in a little bit here.
But I do think, at some point you have to think about what is the succession plan for Al Horford, right? And maybe they're looking at Xavier Tillman as the succession plan for Al Horford. So I'm excited to have him on the team, man. He's one of those guys that guards bigger guys really well. Like anytime Memphis ended up playing against the Nuggets, for example, he's the guy that gives Jokic a little bit of issues. Very sturdy, kind of like PJ Tucker-ish. Does a lot of what Grant was able to do on the defensive end. So I do like Tillman as an addition. And I think it was a home run deal for the Celtics.
Yeah, we've already given you my thoughts on Tillman. So let's go to the next deal the Celtics had. This was right at the buzzer. The Celtics had a few moves to make. And so yesterday, one of the big points of the Tillman deal, was it a TPE? Was it not the TPE? Specifically that Grant Williams TPE that was lying around. And ultimately, they found a way to get it done without using the Grant Williams TPE, which, to be honest, a lot of these TPEs could have been used for just about anybody. This wasn't a very expensive deadline as far as contracts coming into the Celtics, but a move, Brad Stevens from the parking lot at the buzzer. We got Jaden Springer for a second-round pick coming from the Philadelphia 76ers to the Boston Celtics. I know we got a couple of comments here in the chat that Jaden Springer was strongly endorsed by C's assistants with 76ers ties, specifically probably looking at a guy like Sam Cassell, who's been on Doc Rivers' staff for years. So, and I know that throughout Philly, Twitterdom, if you will, they're not super pleased about this move. And, it's kind of a weird deadline for the 76ers, and we'll talk more about them here in just a second with another move that they made. But Greg, any thoughts on Jaden Springer? I mean, the little bit of exposure that I have to Jaden Springer, this guy is crazy bouncy, super athletic, and to be honest, we've seen him give Jason Tatum a little bit of trouble in some of the games that we've seen. I know there's a clip from him earlier this year. He picked Tatum's pocket at midcourt, and I specifically remember the first time. That was the preseason game when he blocked him at the rim. That's the first time I jumped out like, damn, who's this Jaden Springer guy? Like, okay, as Philly was progressing, I was like, that's a sneaky, pretty solid 8th, 9th guy. And yeah, Celtics just picked him up for second-round pick, and we'll see if he has any impact this year. But as a 21-year-old, I really love this move by Brad.
And it was kind of interesting, right? Because the Sixers also traded Pat Bev. So, with that, their two best point of attack defender, well, Melton, I'd probably put Melton above both of them, but the second and third best point of attack defenders for them, like the backups for Melton, are gone from their team. And with Springer, I think that's kind of what he brings that nobody else on the team really brings to, to the level with the energy and enthusiasm that he has as a point of attack defender. He gets up in your jersey. He's going to force you certain directions over the screen. He's going to fight. There's a lot of clips. Our guy Timmy put out a great highlight video of all his steals this year. And so much of that is just being in somebody's jersey and not allowing people to get space, especially in a high pick and roll. He's just going to fight for that position. And Derek White isn't great at that. Drew Holiday isn't great at that anymore at this point because, they're really good defenders, but they still allow guys to kind of get into their space. Derek White's
Mhm.
really good at that chase down defense, right? From behind blocking it. Drew Holiday is better at guarding like bigger guys, very similar to Marcus Smart. Springer's one of those guys that can like kind of handle a Jalen Brunson. There's a nice little clip of him giving Jalen Brunson some issues. I'm not saying that Jaden Springer is going to supplant Derek White or Drew Holiday and get
I
any
don't know,
minutes over
Greg.
them.
Kinda sounds like that's what you're saying.
I'm just saying that he has a skill set that I don't necessarily think any of the guards on the team right now are looking at as their primary number
Right.
one skill. And I think Jaden Springer's primary number one skill is ball pressure, and that's it. Right. So they
Yeah.
can throw him into a game when they need that one specific thing. And I think he has the ability to do that.
I think he's the option, and this is a word that Adam used a ton yesterday. It was optionality, right? Like, how do we have multiple options at different
Which is
positions that
just
give you
which is
what you
just the
need?
word options, by the way. It's the same thing.
All right, well, same thing. But my point being this is that part of Jaden Springer right now where if Peyton Pritchard's not if there is a guy like Jalen Brunson that's giving Derek White and Drew Holiday trouble, who's not the answer to that? Peyton Pritchard. Love Peyton Pritchard. Like Pritchard's gonna have there we go. We got Adam chiming in here. I love Peyton Pritchard. I think Peyton Pritchard's still gonna be that third guard, so to speak, right? With the depth chart most nights. But if you do have a time where you're playing a team like the Knicks, we're going to get to in a minute here, and you need to throw another body at Jalen Brunson, maybe it's Jaden Springer for 8 minutes in a game. That's a guy that, he's not going to be a guy that's going to light it up for you offensively, but you know what? Celtics have plenty of firepower on offense. That's not going to be the biggest concern. He's not much of a scorer, does not shoot the ball particularly well. Although I will say, in the last 8 games with Philly was really the first time he's gotten consistent run, just kind of looking through his game logs. He was playing about 17 and a half minutes per game. Specifically, those last 5 games he was in Philly, played above 20 minutes in all of them. And field goal percentage jumped up to about 46%. Not bad, like not terrible, right? And then he's getting 1.5 steals in 17 and a half minutes a game. Like that's what you're going to need from Jaden Springer as far as that option or optionality, whichever one of my co-hosts prefers, whichever word, whoever I'm
They're
working with
both
here.
nouns. You're just making a noun again.
All right. Nobody wants an English lesson. That's not what they're here for. We're here to talk basketball. So if Jaden Springer can be thrown in that moment, that is where the benefit, if we see it this year from Jaden Springer, that's the moment that he could have. And there's a reason. I mean, if Philly fans are upset, that's also just a win for Celtics fans, right? That means that there's something there that they saw that
Well,
they
he's
feel like they're
21.
cutting ties too
He's
quickly. Yeah.
21, dude. It's not like he's a guy that's been in the league for a long time. He's a young guy that has a lot of potential. And, for the Sixers, the fact that they, as I already mentioned, they only have one point of attack defender now, and it's Melton.
Yep.
And he's slight of frame. I think that's what Jaden Springer kind of has. He's got a little bit of that like young Marcus Smart in him, the way that he's able to get up into the jersey of people, as I've been saying. So I'm excited to just like have this guy on the roster. I truly don't expect him to make much of an impact this year. I would love for him to prove me wrong. Kind of reminds me a little bit of when I watched Deuce McBride in New York, where I'm like, man, Deuce McBride, like he should probably play a little bit more because he always just gives people issues. And I just
And he
like
got a
having an
contract this season
agitator.
too.
Yeah, I like having an agitator coming off the bench. I think Pritchard does a pretty good job of pressuring the ball, especially 94 feet, just kind of switching things up. But I don't think that's his primary skill. As I said, I think his primary skill is to pressure the ball. Yeah, I think I'm sprung on Springer, man. And Adam, optionality sounds better when you say it.
You got me doing
Hey,
things
I
I
can't
never
talk
do.
English, and you can't sing, dude.
Yeah.
Come on.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Let's not have everybody tune out. Appreciate everybody that is locked in with us. Throw some comments or some questions here in the chat. We'll make sure that we get to them. But yeah, I think Springer's a great move. 21. I believe he's under contract for next year as well. So it's a high upside move for next year as well. One other move the Celtics made here. So as I said, they sent out a second to get Springer. Well, they got one back when they sent Delano Banton to the Trailblazers. So buy Banton, buy Stevens. They are no longer on the back end of the Celtics bench. Does leave them, and Greg, you and I were chatting about this briefly, does leave them with an open roster spot. And I think that was the entire point of that Banton move, was to give them another chance that if there is someone from the buyout market that presents themselves, that they do still have that open roster spot should it become available. Once again, Brad Stevens seems like he's pretty fucking good at this thing. Seems like he's pretty damn good at this job. So another what seems to be so far a great trade deadline for Brad Stevens.
Guy I'm keeping an eye out on. I just want to shout out there, Otto Porter Jr. Want to see him. I want to see him in Boston.
Okay, that is a name. That's going to be something we'll talk about here in just a minute because there's a few guys that already are getting bought out or released that may be options for the Celtics or could go elsewhere. But I want to now transition to kind of the teams closest to the Celtics in the East and what they did. And we've already started to talk about Philly for a little bit. So let's just stick there for a minute. I don't think what they did today was actually a little bit confusing. So you talked about, obviously we talked about the Springer move. They then went ahead and traded Patrick Beverley to the Bucks. So they made 2 trades with 2 teams they're contending with. And I know the Embiid situation is up in the air, but that's very
It
rare.
murkies the
You see,
waters.
yeah, it's very rare though that you see contenders have multiple trades with teams that they're in content. Like it just doesn't happen very often. But then they did make the Buddy Hield move, which, I think if Embiid does come back healthy, I actually do like that move for them, just from the aspect of having that shooter to play off of him and Maxi's dynamic, pick and roll type game. Like that is a guy that could help them, but seems like they're kind of looking more ahead. They're trying to give themselves a little bit of flexibility this year in case Embiid comes back, but also feels like they're kind of more preparing for the offseason than it is gearing up for this season.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. I think with Hield, even like let's say Embiid comes back and he's perfectly healthy. I was trying to think of it through like rose tinted glasses for the Philadelphia 76ers. And the way that I'm thinking about it is, well, shit. If I have Buddy Hield on the court with Tyrese Maxey, that's a horrible defensive backcourt, right? We're gonna just like have teams run all over us. But with Hield, maybe it's just the minutes in which Maxi's off the court and Embiid's still on the court when they're resting Maxey, just to have another guy with a lot of gravity on the court, just to continue the high efficiency of that offense, because they don't really have any snipers on that team. They really needed a sniper. And I think that's what Buddy Hield is. He's the sniper of all snipers, right? It's just, he's not a great defender. There's a reason why people have moved on from him year after year. And I think with Hield, he's going to be someone that they, to use Adam's word, optionality. They're going to be able to do the Buddy Hield experiment for a little bit with Joel Embiid and see, what, is he a guy that actually makes this team better? Does he make us go to a level we didn't expect because of his ability to be a movement shooter and how great he is at coming off of screens? I would love to see, if I'm a Sixers fan, I'd love to see that, just a little bit of a experiment there, and then we can decide at the end of the year if we want to sign him for a cheaper price or just move on.
Oh God, I love that. I think it's another one of those pre-agency moves, right? Where Buddy Hield is going to be a free agent in the upcoming offseason. So it's kind of a free look. And then they also, they're going to have a ton of cap space anyways. But yeah, kind of a weird day for Philadelphia 76ers fans and how they should feel. But we're not a Sixers podcast, so let's move on, because I think the biggest move that could impact the Celtics is what the New York Knicks did. And we've talked about the New York Knicks several times here in the last couple of weeks as a team that is on the rise. In fact, they're now at the 4 seed, and them and Cleveland have just been shooting up like a rocket ship. So now we have a really tight race for that 2 seed, with Cleveland currently in pole position and the Bucks and Knicks right behind. But you talked about, the Sixers didn't have sharpshooting. Well, the Knicks went and got some shooting today. So the Knicks make a big move today with the Pistons. The Knicks receive Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks, who is a Tom Thibodeau favorite, in exchange for Quentin Grimes, Evan Fournier, Malachi Flynn, and 2 second-round picks. Greg, I know for the last couple of weeks, you and I have especially been going back and forth with one of our good buddies here, Liptak, who's a big Knicks fan, and been like, who's that wing? They're going to go get a wing. Are they going to try to go for the Wiggins type? Can they get really aggressive and find a way to get Mikal Bridges? We talked a lot about Bogdanovic being that guy. Ends up being him, and they get Burks as a depth piece. So feels like a really nice move for the Knicks. I know this is the team that you're kind of looking at from a Celtic perspective, that they're coming. So let me hear what you're thinking on this move.
Well, I also saw a report that maybe OG Anunoby is dealing with some bone spurs in his elbow.
Well, so this is the thing. So he's dealing with some injuries. Randall's out. Robinson's out. Brunson rolled his ankle the other day. So I know we've had a few of our text threads blowing up today about the depth of the Knicks. Half of that depth is hurt right now. So that's number one, is they got to get healthy. And I know the calendar is February 8th. They've got about 2+ months to go ahead and get healthy. So there's time. But that is the bigger issue with the Knicks right now, is that all this depth is great, but they got to get the main guys healthy.
Yeah, I think the Knicks are the second best team in the East. I've been saying that for weeks now. I do think that this move, I don't think Burks is probably going to play any meaningful minutes for them. I think he's a regular season depth piece. But Bogdanovich is a guy that I think
That's a
completely
dude.
changes their team. I really do. Just like I didn't think the Sixers had enough shooting. I don't think the Knicks had enough shooting because Evan Fournier sure wasn't playing under Tom Thibodeau. Tom Thibodeau just like would not play Evan Fournier. So I do think with Bogdanovich, he's going to add a lot to that team just in ability to take a little bit of the load off of Brunson without having to just put the entire load on Julius Randle, who doesn't make anybody better. So I do think that you can run your offense through Bogdanovich. He's a knockdown shooter. He's going to space the floor really well. I don't know, what their best 5 lineup is right now. I would probably have him in that best 5 lineup. I do think that
I think Bogdanovich would crack that top 5 lineup.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's just like maybe there's a world in which they go like all defense at the end of the game. You know what I
Right.
mean? And
Yeah, I mean, that could be
hard.
offense,
Yeah,
defense, substitution. I mean,
right.
that's the whole point of their depth is that they could do
Mhm.
theoretically things like that.
He's in there like we just called a timeout with 30 seconds left. We need to get a bucket. He's in the game, and I
So
think
to your
that's
point, Greg, real quick, it looks like we may have gotten a Woj update on OG Anunoby. So he is having. So here it is directly from Woj. Breaking news: OG Anunoby had surgery to remove a loose bone fragment in his right elbow and will miss a minimum of 3 weeks. Sources tell ESPN procedure is considered minor, and he's not expected to he is expected, to resume basketball activities in 3 weeks. So that's part of the Alex Burks
there you go.
acquisition. There need to kind of bridge that gap a little bit. Let me ask you this, Greg. How in a 7-game series, how nervous do the Knicks make you? And let's say that they get everybody back healthy. How nervous do they make you looking at what Boston has and what they've done at the trade deadline with everything the Knicks have done? How do you view them in a 7-game series?
I'm scared of them. I was scared of them before the trade, man. I think that they present so many issues, especially with the types of teams that the Celtics struggle with. The Celtics don't like teams that just like make life difficult for you. Can we say the Celtics are front runners? I don't know because they blow leads with 2 minutes left in every game. They blow the lead because they don't know how to hold lead. But I do think that with the Knicks, I've said this before, but I'll reiterate it for anyone who may not have heard. The Knicks have all of the pieces to give the Celtics issues. They have the perfect point guard to give the Celtics issues with Jalen Brunson, right? I was talking earlier about Jaden Springer and how I like his point of attack
AKA
defense,
the Brunson stopper.
AKA the Brunson stopper. And I do think that, Jalen Brunson's ability to play in high pick and roll and just like get into the mid range is something to keep an eye on because the Celtics, I think one of the biggest reasons the Celtics go to that 2-1-2 zone is to take away the middle of the floor and to take away point guards like Jalen Brunson, who like just operating in high pick and roll and living around the elbow and the nail. So I do think that, they have that perfect point guard. They have the perfect, one of the best wing defenders to guard Jason Tatum and OG Anunoby. The biggest issue with Anunoby throughout his career is the inability to stay on the court, which we see to this day. Josh Hart is another good defender that they can throw at a Jaylen Brown. They have Hartenstein that I think is actually a better fit to guard Kristaps Porzingis than Robinson is. So although Robinson, I think, works in a lot of matchups, I think Hartenstein's actually a really key piece for them to have a mobile big that can switch out onto a Tatum for a second, hedge, and then recover, and also have the mobility to recover out to the 3-point line to run Porzingis off the 3-point line. Because so many centers, when they want to deal with Porzingis out of the 3-point line, they don't want to contest all the way out there, right? They want to put a hand up, kind of do the Rob Williams contest where it's like, it's not really a contest, but you're just showing, you have your hand up. So I can look at the film and be like, look, I contested. No, you didn't really contest. So I think that's what Hartenstein's able to do. He will run Porzingis off the 3-point line to the degree that nobody else on that roster can. Julius Randle, I'm not scared of him, but for some reason he thinks that he can just bully everybody on the Celtics. Maybe that's a Xavier Tillman matchup. So I do think that they have a lot of nice pieces. Me, I'm not a big Precious guy, but Precious is under Tibbs.
Playing well for them.
Yeah, he looks really well under Tibbs. And they just like have a bunch of guys that are going to muck shit up and make the Celtics uncomfortable over 7 games. And we saw what happens like last year when the Heat did the same shit, man. When Kevin Love injured Giannis Antetokounmpo in round 1. They have some guys that it's like, God damn it, I really don't want to play against him for 7 games because he might hurt one of us. It's the Aaron Nesmith effect.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the Knicks, what they've done is they've shrunk the margin of error that the Celtics have. So you kind of alluded to this, and we didn't do a post game last night for Celtics Hawks, and the only real talking point that I probably would have had is that, and I tweeted a little bit about this. I don't know what the perfect number is, but basically Celtics with like an 8 to 12 point lead and 2.5 to 3.5 minutes left is maybe the scariest place that the Celtics can possibly be. If they're up two or three, down 2 or 3, I actually feel very confident with the Celtics late game that even if we don't win, it's going to be make or miss, which is something I think you said before. Its execution is typically there. It's just kind of make or miss sometimes, and that happens. With that 8 to 12 point lead, and we saw it last night where the Hawks nearly walked that down. We were one Sadiq Bey wide open 3 versus a last second shot clock Kristaps Porzingis 3. One goes in, one doesn't. The lead goes from instead of down to 2 to back up to 8. Celtics survive. Everybody moves on with their day. There's nothing to panic about, but it's still that space that is a real problem area for the Celtics. And I even think back to last postseason. You think about trying to close the Hawks out in the first round in 5 games, and they leave just enough window because they kind of mess around in that window. And, you're playing, even if you don't think the Hawks are as good as you, you're playing a team that has a guy like Trae Young that's going to say, I can go get a game. I can get a game. I'm not going to be able to get the series, but I can get a game. And now you're adding on to your total that you have to play throughout. We've seen it multiple times with the Heat, even game 6 where Derek White has that tip back. They chased us down in that game. People forget that because Derek White puts the tip back in. Celtics were in control of that game for most of it until the Heat came and chased us down. Of course, you remember game 7 2 years ago in the Eastern Conference Finals where it was the clock felt like it was taking 3 years to run out, and Jimmy Butler nearly hits that 3. So this is still a persistent problem with the Celtics. When I look at the Knicks, Jalen Brunson's a killer at the end of games, right? Bojan Bogdanovic, not scared. Doesn't matter when he's playing, where he's playing, he's not scared. OG Anunoby, 0.5 seconds, anybody? We've seen him hit a last-second shot against the Celtics. So the Knicks have closed that margin of error where now I still would find it very shocking if the Knicks would beat the Celtics. If everyone's healthy in a 7-game series, that would be a really, really rough end to the Celtics season. And I think, to be honest, anyone beating the Celtics in the East is going to be, if the Celtics are healthy, is going to be a really rough end to the Celtics season. But if the Celtics give away a game that they should win in a series against the Knicks that takes it from 6 to 7, and you put yourself in that 1-game scenario, anything can happen. And that's where I think the Knicks have kind of put themselves in a position that if the Celtics don't correct what has ailed them now for 5 years, 3 coaches, like if they still can't figure out what to do when they have that particular lead late in the game, that's going to be the one game the Knicks come and steal, that Brunson grabs our hearts, throws it on the floor and stomps on it. And now all of a sudden you're in a game 7 and you're like, I don't fully know what to expect. And maybe it works out, or maybe if that's the conference finals, we see the effects in the finals, or if it's the second round, we see it in the conference finals, so on and so forth. And that's where I think the Knicks have done a really good job of just shrinking that gap. And if we give them an opening, they got a shot.
Yeah, and with the Celtics late game offense, and we're trying to keep this positive, everybody. So I don't want to go too deep into this, but I would love to hear just like in the chat as a fun little exercise, give me one adjective to describe the Celtics late game offense. I would just love to hear what people currently feel when the Celtics have a 10-point lead with 2 minutes left. How would you describe the offense, or how would you describe the emotions that are running through your body? Because it's the most annoying thing in the world. It's like, for a lot of teams, the clock is your friend. For the Celtics, the clock is like their worst enemy, where they're just like looking at it like, when are you going to run out? When are you going to run out? Are you moving slower now? Like even yesterday, there was this one play. I think there's about 2 minutes left in the game. I think Porzingis had just hit that corner that everyone thought
he thought it was a 3. Yeah.
And Horford gets the ball on the left wing on a kind of secondary break, and it felt like we could have just gotten a layup. And Horford decided to just pull the ball out and run the entire shot clock down. And then we did that like 4 possessions in a row. And even at the end, when we're up 6, all Tatum has to do is just like go dunk the ball. We're up 8. It's a 3-possession game with 20 seconds left. He pulls it out. They foul. Then they get another guy to the free throw line.
Derek White had a similar possession that led to that Kristaps Porzingis 3 late in the shot clock, but there was a 2-on-1 opportunity up 5. Like, Go get the 2. Go get the 2 and make it a 7-point game. Like,
yeah, just go do it, man. And I think giving a team an opportunity to hang around, because Bogdanovic ended up fouling. I forget who hit the final 2 free throws. Maybe it was White, but it's a 2-possession game, right? And they're giving themselves a chance by fouling there. Maybe he misses 2 free throws. They hit a 3-pointer, and the worst case scenario can happen for the Celtics. But Tatum just like decided, the game's over. I'm going to pull it out. It's like, when are we going to realize you need to just go finish the fucking game? Just go finish the fucking game, man. We're
and
better
that's
when we're playing from behind in the fourth, but when we have
yeah.
a lead, we're just garbage.
Exactly. I mean, if it's super tight, then they kind of still play the way they need to. But if it's just that weird margin, I don't know. We'll have to figure out exactly what that margin is. That is kind of that terrifying zone. But when you get to the playoffs, that's what's going to make the difference. And so, I'm just looking through the East here before we kind of start running through some of these other trades and just giving your thoughts. Is that so the Knicks make their move. The Bucks basically biggest move was getting Patrick Beverley. That's about it. Campaign to Patrick Beverley, I guess defensively for what they need, slight upgrade. Cavs, nothing from them today. The Sixers, we've talked about how weird their day is, but it doesn't really matter unless Joel Embiid's healthy anyway, so we can kind of put them on the back burner. The Pacers, they trade Buddy Hield. They do get Doug McDermott from the Spurs. He's kind of a Buddy Hield light replacement. They've already made their big move with going to get Pascal Siakam. Heat, they made their move with Terry Rozier. Magic, nothing from them. So I look around the East and, like other than the Knicks, it feels like not too much has changed.
You surprised that the Heat didn't make a move?
I am. And now I don't know what they might be able to do on the buyout market. We'll see how that plays out because they are going to be a team that's probably attractive. But I mean, this is once again, I don't know. Like, I just hate talking about the Heat because once again, I want to feel chesty. I want to be like, yeah, man, the Heat don't bother me. Like, I just don't see how the Heat are going to do it. And then they might just somehow do it again. But it feels like for like the third or fourth year in a row that they don't have enough. But, Kevin Love on the buyout market ended up being a huge move for them last year. So maybe it's a buyout thing. I don't know what to do. The Heat are just kind of that team that, yeah, we have to mention every time we talk about contenders, but I don't know how to analyze them or break them down as to what they mean. But the rest of the East, it just feels like other than the Knicks, like the Celtics have, in my opinion, put a pretty solid gap between them. Like, I think the Cavs are scary, but I really thought they were a team that could have used the move to really give them a little bit more juice. I don't know what move was out there for them, but I feel like they're a guy or two away from being truly scary, even though they've been playing great basketball lately. But anyone in the East that I mean, like I said, there's not a ton of movement today in the East other than the Knicks, but anyone else that you think right now sticks out to you as a contender or a trouble spot for the Celtics?
No, man. I think the only team I'm scared of is the Knicks. I actually don't want to play them in the playoffs. I don't think I could handle it. But I do think, once Embiid went down, because I thought Embiid with the current Sixers was a real problem for the Celtics, especially with all the length that they added with Covington and Batum, two guys that I'm not like crazy about, but I think they do have, the length and the versatility to give Tatum and Brown issues. So I really, the only team that concerns me right now is the Knicks and then the Zombie Heat, and that's about it. So let's take a look around the rest of the league, man, because I know
let's start rolling through some other trades that we got here. So we've already talked about a couple that we've got laid out here. Here's a fun one. We got a couple of old friends to talk about. Let's start with the Thunder. Thunder go out and trade Trey Mann, Davis Bertans, and I believe some draft compensation for Gordon Hayward. Now, this is looking ahead to a potential finals matchup, right? Like the Thunder are young, but this is the type of win now move. And Hayward was a guy that I didn't know if there was a path for him to get to Cleveland. Really didn't want him going to Cleveland. I thought Cleveland or New York would end up getting Bogdanovich. Both of those were going to be really nice fits for Gordon Hayward.
Are we sure that Gordon Hayward's not just completely washed, though?
I mean, for the role that he's going to have to play in these scenarios, I think he's still good. I don't think he's a nothing, right? Like, I don't think he's Gordon Hayward. He's not Gordon Hayward from Utah. He's not even Gordon Hayward, the bubble year, right? Where he was really good until he got hurt in the bubble and then wasn't really able to come back and be. I don't even think he's that Gordon Hayward. But if you need a connector, he's probably more of like a lesser Derek White at this point. Like, that's kind of like,
I feel like Gordon Hayward at this point, like anytime I tune into the Hornets, remember when he came back, I forget, I think it was against the Heat in the bubble when it was like, Gordon Hayward, like, why are you even on the court, bro? Like, you shouldn't be on the court right now.
He missed the birth of, I think, one of his kids to rehab because if he left, he had to do the whole quarantine.
Yeah, and he came back. Remember, he like missed that wide open layup at one point in like a really important moment, and he was kind of like, he came back and it was like, oh, nice, Gordon Hayward at least knows how to manipulate his own defense. Like, we don't have anybody else on the team that can do that, but then he couldn't do anything else. So that's kind of how I see Gordon Hayward at this point. I haven't been impressed with anything. And I'm not watching a lot of Hornets games, but I've probably seen like 5 Hornets games this year that weren't related to the Celtics. And I just don't think that he's anything to write home about, man. I think he definitely improves the Thunder to, with just basketball IQ, veteran savvy, all that. I am interested to see if he is better than he was showing in Charlotte, because what was he playing for in Charlotte?
Yeah,
Like,
I think
maybe
that's
he's
part of always
rejuvenated.
the question with anyone in
Right.
Charlotte.
Right. So maybe he's rejuvenated here. I like the fit. Like, if Gordon Hayward is not washed, then I think he fits really well in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, just you think about how when the Celtics played the Thunder, like we were like, all right, Josh Giddey, you better hit 4 or 5 threes because we're going to give them to you, right? Now just put Gordon Hayward in that spot, right? Like, just at least in that scenario, you can't just say, Gordon Hayward, I'm going to let you shoot 8 wide open threes, and I'm gonna bet on you making 2 of them, right? Like so I think that will change their end of game lineups, and just having, and he's a bigger guy, right? So just having a guy out there, because they're a small team, right? So I don't think he's quite the big they needed, but even on the wings, their wings, like Lou Dort's, he's a stocky guy. He's not necessarily like tall and long. Like Gordon Hayward gives them a little bit more versatility. So I like that. I like that move for OKC a lot. And obviously he's on an expiring deal, and they have a million draft picks. So, and let's see, Adam chiming in here. I hope he's washed. Imagine how much you sweat when playing an NBA game. He would be very smelly. Adam is an A+ trolling commenter when he's not here.
I actually do. I prefer this Adam.
This is a great. Adam's been trolled so much that he's now the best troll in the game. I think that is what we're seeing has happened. But appreciate you as always, my guy. All right, let's go to the next. Let's go to the next Celtic friend that got moved today. Homecoming. Grant Williams going back to Charlotte. Charlotte is traded PJ Washington to Dallas for Grant Williams, Seth Curry, and a basically unprotected first-round pick. I think it's top 2 protected in 2027. And here's the question I want to know, Greg, and Adam, feel free to chime in the chat here. Are we the last podcast on the internet, maybe the last people on the internet, that still think Grant Williams is a good player? Because this is a lot to get off of Grant Williams' contract for the Dallas Mavericks.
Here's my thing. I said from the very beginning of the year, the first time I watched Grant play in Dallas, that it wasn't going to be a good fit for him. I didn't think that playing off of Luka, like theoretically, Grant Williams spacing to the corners and whatnot, like, yeah, cool. But all he did was just stand around. And that's what all anybody does when they play with Luka Doncic, is just stand around. And Grant is the guy that kind of needs to be involved a little bit. Like, we saw Grant when there were games in Boston where he wasn't involved and he kind of just disappeared. And then Mazzulla would get upset and take him off the court, or Udoka wouldn't play him, And I think with Grant, he needs to be empowered just a little bit more than is ever going to be possible in a Luka Doncic offense. So he's going to get, I guess, a chance to try it out in Charlotte and see with like a little bit more responsibility what happens there.
He's going to fill those Gordon Hayward and PJ Washington shoes.
Here's the thing about Grant. He's got a great basketball IQ, but like, it's hard to utilize that IQ when all you're doing is standing around. I think Grant would like function really well in Golden State. I think he'd be a nice.
Well, that was I at least heard that on a couple podcasts that was like people had like surmised like that would have been a good fit. So we'll see how this is for Grant. I mean, having to trade to just sign him to a 4-year deal and then have to move basically an unprotected first-round pick with him to go get PJ Washington, who I like PJ Washington, but I wouldn't exactly put them in crazy different tiers of what type of players they are. Now, the PJ Washington's a bit bigger, like taller, as far as like giving, Dallas maybe a little bit more of what they need height-wise.
Barely. He's like 6'7".
That's what I'm saying. It's not that big of a gap between Grant Williams and PJ Washington. So to me, throwing in a unprotected, basically first-round pick is, that is a tough look.
Listen, man, Brad Stevens is a goddamn genius.
Apparently, Brad knew that if we signed that man Grant, there was, it was going to be tough to get off if we needed to. So, once again, Brad strikes by not giving Grant the deal that we said that he maybe should have got, and now he's got his guy in Xavier Tillman, who cost $2 million on an expiring deal, who's kind of his replacement. So, once again, good work by Brad. All right, a couple other deals that we can hit here. Let's see. Brooklyn sent out Royce O'Neal to Phoenix. I know they were rumored for that to be a Miles Bridges spot. Royce O'Neal to Phoenix. That do anything for you? I know we talked about Phoenix the other day as far as a fringe finals contender. Both of us said we were kind of suspect on their defense being enough. I don't know if Royce O'Neal's fine. I don't think that really changes much for me with Phoenix.
Royce O'Neal's kind of like the new Wes Matthews. You know what I mean? Just like a guy that everyone like kind of talks themselves into.
And like it's a nice headline. Like, hey man, we're focusing on defense. We got Wes Matthews. We got
Right.
Royce O'Neal. We're
Right.
upgrading. It's like,
And
yeah, maybe, but not by
Royce
much.
O'Neal, like he's not a bad defender. I've seen him give Tatum issues, but I've also seen guys that you would never think to give Tatum issues. And it's just, to me, it's like that's a Tatum thing. That's not a Royce O'Neal thing. That was a game where Tatum was just like in his own head. Royce O'Neal is not good enough to give Jason Tatum problems, right?
Right.
So I do think that he's probably an upgrade for them. They don't really have much in terms of wing defenders. So I think, he's one of those guys that they can at least look at and say, we know that he can guard a little bit, right? We can throw him out onto the court. He can guard a little bit. He can shoot a little bit. I don't think he really makes him that much better, but I think adding him in play, who did they get rid of? Watanabe?
Watanabe's gone.
Watanabe,
Yeah, they also added David Roddy.
Little?
They also added David Roddy in another trade.
I like Roddy for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like Roddy for them, but do they still have what's that the thick dude that looks like Roddy, like Wainwright or something like that? Ish Wainwright.
Ish Wainwright. I'm not sure, man. I don't remember, to be honest.
Same player,
that up, but
same body type. But okay, yeah. I mean, Royce O'Neal, cool. Yeah, you're on Phoenix. I don't think Phoenix is winning the title, but I think he makes them a little bit better. Sure.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. Another move here: Spurs sent Doug McDermott to the Pacers. We kind of touched on that already. That's basically a Buddy Hield replacement as far as shooting goes. I don't think there's too much to comment on that. Royce O'Neal, Adam, I'm telling you, this should be how you make money, man. This is where your money's at. This is where your bread is buttered. And then we got kind of a weird trade here. The Jazz. So we've talked about Kelly Olynyk a bunch as being a potential, for the Celtics. Kept being rumored, never really made sense financially. There really wasn't a way to get there. But ultimately, he, along with Osha Agbai, I think that's how you say his name, went to the Raptors for Osha Abaji. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Okay.
They call him Agbai.
Maybe I'm thinking of Uka Agbai from those back in the DC days.
Hey, shout out to Uka Agbai.
I know, right? What are the chances that gets referenced on a podcast anytime soon? So they end up going to Toronto for Kira Lewis, Otto Porter, who, Greg, you mentioned already could be a buyout candidate here, and a 2024 first-round pick. So Kelly, it kind of just goes to the Raptors. Once again, I think this is another pre-agency move. I don't think we're going to see Kelly in the playoffs. I think Kelly's kind of out of the playoff picture here, going to Toronto. I think they're going to obviously look to maybe re-sign him and have his bird rights going into the offseason. So they're looking ahead to next year. They also made a move to get Spencer Dinwiddie, but looks like they're going to release Spencer Dinwiddie or buy him out before he gets his bonus.
Killian Hayes.
Along with Killian Hayes. So here's a couple of names that I think are going to be on the buyout market. Some Celtics can be in play for, some they logistically cannot, like Spencer Dinwiddie, be in play for. But it looks like maybe Otto Porter, Spencer Dinwiddie. You mentioned Killian Hayes. Looks like I think someone had mentioned Thad Young got bought out. Robin Lopez appears to potentially be on the market. Marcus Morris, Daniel House. Any of these names jumping out to you, Greg, as initial potential buyout candidates? Like I said, Spencer Dinwiddie not going to be an option given his contract.
Yeah, I think it's just Porter, man. I think Porter was actually really important for the Warriors a couple of years back. I thought he played really well for them. He hasn't been healthy. That's the big thing with Otto Porter, is you never know, is this guy going to be able to stay healthy? So I think he's worth a flyer. If he could be healthy in the playoffs, he's a nice wing depth piece there. He can shoot it a little bit, got a high IQ, decent defender, can guard up a little bit. It's interesting with the Celtics. They kind of are betting on O'Shea Brissett here, right? They're betting on O'Shea Brissett to be able to be that big wing that was referenced, about a month ago. They haven't picked anybody up that would fill in that role. So Adam's boy, O'Shea Brissett, I think is kind of the winner of this trade deadline. If you're thinking about
the spot, basically, right?
Yeah, I mean, he outplayed Banton and Stevens. Those are the two guys that were his competition coming into the year, and he's earned to hit the right to stay on the roster. I think it was probably something that the Celtics worked out with Banton and Stevens to be like, hey, you're just not going to get an opportunity. Didn't work out. Here's a chance to go play elsewhere. So I'm hoping that's what that was for them, because I like both those guys. And yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering from the Celtics perspective here, do you feel comfortable now with the moves that we've made? If we don't make a move on the buyout market, do you feel like we have enough?
I do, to be honest. Like, I mean, I could always use more insurance because you never know, right? So I'll always take a flyer on whether it's Otto Porter, I mean, that's probably. I mean, I've always been kind of an Otto Porter stand to a certain level. I remember way back in the day when he was an expiring contract, I was making a case for the Celtics to find a way to put him into. We had that massive TPE. I think he fit in as one of those candidates, and I was making a big case to get him plugged in there. And then we saw what he did, like you said, for the Warriors. Like, I'm always going to take a flyer on some type of insurance like that. But I don't necessarily think it's like if the Celtics weren't to find somebody in the buyout market, I don't think that changes much. I really don't. Like, I think the team the Celtics have right now, it's all about health. And I think the best thing they did was that, like, for me, picking up Xavier Tillman, that's a guy that if you do in your front court have an injury, he's already played in the playoffs. I'm going to see if I can find it here a minute ago. I know Brian Barrett tweeted out yesterday what his stats were from last year's playoff series going up against the Lakers, and he had really impressive numbers like in that series. So this guy's been in the playoffs, right? So that's, to me, the fact that we brought him in without losing anything, you know, that is a massive win. So if that's your team going in, I feel like we already have at minimum 7 playoff proven guys. And then you just got to kind of figure out. And I'm not going to include, and listen, Peyton Pritchard played in the finals, so you can include him if you want. And I was including Tillman as that 7th guy, but Pritchard's played in the finals. Sam Hauser got some, you know, run a little bit last year. So it's really that Hauser, Cornette, and you're already at your 8, 9 guys, like that top 6, 7. Like, I'm fully confident. And this is what I said earlier when we were talking about the Eastern Conference. There's not a single team in the East, if the Celtics are healthy, that if they lose, it's going to be a rough offseason, right? It's going to be a massive disappointment of a season if they lose to any of those teams. Right now, I look around and I think there's only 2 teams, and they're both teams in the Western Conference, that I feel like there is a reasonable case that I could walk away from this season and go, yeah, that team was just better than us, or they had something that we couldn't overcome. And that's, of course, the Nuggets. And I think if the Clippers continue to get Kawhi and then he activates playoff mode Kawhi with what they have around that, you know, those are the 2 teams I look at. That I think that's the only 2 teams right now that if the Celtics were to lose in the playoffs, that I might be able to walk away and go, hey, let's make a few tweaks. Let's change the scheme up a little bit, but we got what it takes. Everyone else, it's, you got to take a look in the mirror and see, what do we do from here?
Yeah. I mean, we can get into this more throughout the rest of the season, but for me, if the Celtics play well and get beat in the finals, I think I could live with that. I could not live with the Celtics beating themselves. Like, I can't live with the Celtics not winning a championship. My fiance is calling me. Hold on one second. I get the notifications on the phone from my phone.
I forget how I did it, but I turned it off because I couldn't have that happen.
Yeah. She I think she wants to order pizza tonight, so she's probably calling me to ask me if I've ordered the pizza. But you know, I could not deal with the Celtics blowing a lead to lose the finals or to lose in the Eastern Conference Finals. If we get beat by a team like Jokic's Nuggets or Kawhi's Clippers, I think I could at least fall asleep at night. I will need to like re-up my BetterHelp subscription if the Celtics blow a lead and get eliminated from the finals. Like, truly, I probably
100%. And real quick, I just found the Brian Barrett tweet from the other day when Tillman got traded to the Celtics. Last year in the playoffs versus the Lakers, played 30 minutes per game, 8.7 points, 8 rebounds, 3.2 assists, 22 and 13 in their game 2 win. Defensive rating with Tillman on the floor, 105.7. With Tillman off the floor, 113.6. So those are some pretty nice numbers to have from your 7th, 8th guy that you just picked up for, you know, for a guy at the back end of your bench that wasn't playing. So, you know, I think for the Celtics, man, it's, you know, as I'm saying that, I'm talking about the long term. If the Celtics end up in the finals against like teams like the Clippers or Nuggets, the thing I just thought about today is, so we've talked a lot about the dark magic that went into Andrew Wiggins and whatever the hell happened in the finals a couple years ago. And of course, you get a Steph Curry performance where Steph Curry is one of the top 10, 11 greatest players of all time. Like, that's what it took for this team to not win a championship. If somehow the Celtics end up in the finals against the one season Kawhi Leonard and Paul George have together, that they're fully healthy, Paul George resigns, they go back, and the next 4 years are the same, hit or miss. Are they available? Are they not available? If this is the 1 year and they find a way to put it together against the Celtics, that's going to be real tough, man. That's going to be real tough a couple years down the road when we look back and say what could have been.
No, I feel you, man. I feel you. All right. You want to wrap it up?
Yeah, let's wrap it up, man. Appreciate everybody for joining us here. As a quick reminder, make sure that you are following us on social media. Make sure that you are subscribed to the YouTube page. Make sure that you are joining us in the Discord. We get a lot of feedback from a lot of our fans in the Discord. It's a fun time. We always want to make sure that we're incorporating you guys into the show. Make sure you are following Adam's newsletter as well. I know there's some naming issues there. Adam might want to drop that in the link here as well, because I don't remember what it's called at this moment. We're going back and forth. And then also just be on the lookout. We're going to start to have some more preview podcasts for games. That's going to mostly be hosted by Adam. He'll be putting that out there for you, as well as trying to have, Adam does the 10 things takeaway for Celtics blog. He's going to be doing some more extended versions that will be part of the podcast channel on the YouTube channel. So make sure that you guys are locked in. Celtics have a game Friday night. Sunday, they'll be Sunday pre-Super Bowl. Celtics love playing before the Super Bowl. I feel like this has become almost like a yearly tradition. So, Greg, get ready. We're going to run back the same segment we did last year. Remember what it was?
No. I don't remember what I did like an hour ago, dude.
I only remember because I think it's the greatest thing you've ever done on this podcast.
Okay.
It was NBA trade deadline moves as if they were Rihanna songs.
Yeah.
This year, it's your boy, Usher. So you better get ready. You better just fire up the Spotify playlist with Usher. We'll get Greg's takes on NBA trade deadline moves as Usher. I can't wait to see Who's Confessions Part 2. And it's going to be a great one. But make sure you tune in, lock in with us. Might even do a playback coming up here either this weekend or next week. But appreciate y'all. We're going to go ahead and get out of here. And Greg, do you want to do the honors and let them know what they're going to hear on the way out?
Yeah, I'm not gonna play the video though. For those of you that are, because I want to, so I'm gonna play the video. Here's the thing, guys. This video has a great Jason Tatum reference, but I cut the video short before you get to the Jason Tatum reference, and I keep saying,
I've gotten really good at timing this up of exactly when to cut it, and it ends like right after you hear Jason Tatum, and I can just imagine people being like, "Wait, what did Jason Tatum do? What happened to Jason Tatum?"
So we're not gonna play the video. I'm gonna make sure that's a priority for me this weekend. But follow my band, Black Sheep Optimist. We got new music coming out soon. Thanks, everybody.
Peace, y'all.